believe the first one that we did was back in the winter time, January, February. Prabhupada was in the first 6 months of his stay here in the United States, and he was living by the, let's say, goodwill or charity of one impersonalist Mayavad yogi sannyasi who was well situated materially, with a penthouse on West 72nd Street and Riverside Drive. And he gave Prabhupada a room that he could stay in his Hatha Yoga studio, some 3 avenue blocks, West End Avenue to Amsterdam Avenue to Columbus Avenue, which is a long block, Riverside Drive to West End, and then 3 more blocks from 72nd Street to 75th Street. And Prabhupada was staying in that room, which had no shower or kitchen facilities. In other words, just like a little toilet sink closet. So daily, Prabhupada had to walk back and forth the distance I just described to you, starting in November and going all the way until mid-April of 1966. And since they've been keeping records of weather since the late 1800s, it was the coldest and snowiest winter on record. So Prabhupada had to take this walk back and forth every day to take proper bath and to make a cooked meal. So ultimately, Prabhupada was invited by some young people who had seen him uptown. Even today, here in New York City, those who are more free thinkers or artistic or just kind of like a little more progressive or open to new ideas, they generally live downtown, where people who are more set in their ways and fixed in their materialistic position, which by logical comparison is more opulent in that part of the city, Upper West Side, Upper East Side, than anyone else. And so they're not out to change their ways, but maybe just use, especially as it was looked upon 60 years ago, Indian spirituality as like a little cool thing to add to your external portfolio, so people will think that you're something more than what you actually are. So he was invited downtown, first to a loft in the Bowery, which is basically a pre-World War I, pre-war walk-up building, no elevator, walking like this building right now. The elevator's out of commission. 4 stories, and it was a full floor, which had been designated at that time as an artist or musician in resident loft. It had formerly been some type of factory used in the Gilded Age. And then after the Great Depression, everything kind of fell into economic hardship and disrepair. And so the real estate people, to attract people, gave very free, very cheap rent for people who wanted to use such a big, giant space without any renovation. Artists with all their easels and sculpting and everything, and then musicians would have all kinds of jam sessions, et cetera, et cetera. So at that point, Prabhupada had met enough young people who had enough interest and sympathy or empathy to Srila Prabhupada that he would start his own place, not a shared loft with other bohemian musicians, but his own place that he was legally in charge of, and that was 26 Second Avenue. And that was the place that Srila Prabhupada incorporated ISKCON in the first 2 weeks of July, 1966, and we spoke about that last time we gave class. Now it is September, and what was Srila Prabhupada doing? How was he doing in September of 1966? The summer of 1966 moved into August, and Prabhupada kept good health. For him, these were happy days. New Yorkers complained of the summer heat waves, but this caused no inconvenience to one accustomed to the 100-degree plus temperatures of Vrindavan's blazing summers. It's like India. Who comes from India? Is it hot there in the summer? So when it's hot here in New York in the summer, and the native people, resident New Yorkers, have inconvenience, you kind of laugh at that. I lived in Vrindavan for 12 years, so and I come back here and, oh, it's 94 degrees 3 days in a row. It's 94 plus degrees there for 6 months at a time. It's like India, as he went without a shirt, seemingly relaxed and at home. He had thought that in America he would have to subsist on boiled potatoes, otherwise there would be nothing but meat. But here he was happily eating the same rice, dal, and chapatis, and cooking on the same three-tiered stacked cooker as in India. I think I left my glasses over there somewhere. No, that's good. Work on the Srimad Bhagavatam had also gone on regularly since he had moved into the Second Avenue apartment. And now Krishna was bringing more sincere young people who were cooking, typing, hearing him regularly, chanting Hare Krishna, and asking for more. So many young people had come to know of Prabhupada being there on the Lower East Side. It was very good advice from the young people who saw him uptown. Come downtown, that's where things are happening. And many of these young people came forward, and to date, or throughout the entirety of their lives, they became Srila Prabhupada's most devoted and dedicated disciples and followers, helping him do tremendous things for the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. Prabhupada was still a solitary preacher, free to stay or go, writing his books in his own intimate relationship with Krishna, quite dependent on the boys in the store, independent of the boys in the storefront. But now he had taken the International Society for Krishna Consciousness as his spiritual child. The inquiring young men, some of whom had already been chanting steadily for over a month, were like stumbling spiritual infants, and he felt responsible for guiding them. They were beginning to consider him their spiritual master, trusting him to lead them into spiritual life. Although they were unable to immediately follow the multifarious rules that the Brahmins and Vaishnavas in India followed, he was hopeful. According to Srila Rupa Goswami, the most important principle was that one should somehow or other become Krishna conscious. Rules and regulations could come after. People should chant Hare Krishna and render devotional service. They should engage whatever they have in the service of Krishna. And Prabhupada was exercising this basic principle of Krishna consciousness to the furthest limit the history of Vaishnavism had ever seen. And we could also say that the real principle of Vaishnavism is seldom applied properly. In other words, regaining one's position as a pure devotee of Krishna, free from the illusion of all material identification, is the natural position of every living entity, and especially in the human form of life. And if there's something is natural, then it's also one's right. So if one interferes with one's God-given right, which in this case is absolutely correct, God-given right, then it is a type of ultimately violence, if not physical violence, bloodshed, then it's subtle violence, but still violence nonetheless. So in previous, long ago bygone ages, the Vedic culture was applied properly. But we see in the present time that one of the most insidious type of materialistic illusions, which passes off as something sophisticated, has infiltrated and spoiled the original Sanatana Dharma culture of India. Two young, arguably handsome, young Caucasian males were looking at our Harinam party in Union Square Park a couple of days ago, and they were trying to get a comprehensive opinion, or come to some comprehensive opinion of what the thing was all about, according to their perception. And I saw them looking, and I said some introductory line like, "This is the original Vedic, the original spiritual knowledge of India that was present in the Vedic age, the culture of Sanatana Dharma." And I thought, on first look, that they looked like intelligent young men. But what came out of their mouth is, does this have anything to do with eugenics? And I said, no, this has nothing to do, with the bodily conception of life. And they promptly said, we're not interested, as they sauntered and swaggered away, blinded by their youthful proclivities and false ego. So that one is born in a certain way, that is a certain type of blood, a certain type of ancestry. This has nothing to do with reality. And unfortunately, that entered into the so-called way of procedure of Brahminical culture in India, that unless one is born in the so-called higher class of Brahmin, there is no chance for one to perform ultimately pure devotional activities, which they held, these caste Brahmins, a tight monopoly on, or almost like you see how like the Christian church became contaminated in the Middle Ages, selling favors that, you to get free from your sinful reaction or to gain the favor of God, you give us this money, or you sign your life away in this way, leading to great upheaval, dissatisfaction, reformations, etc., etc., etc. So Vaishnavism has always stood against this caste Brahmanism, which ultimately led to the partition of India into Pakistan. It's a very long history that Iranian or Persian, we call them Mughal conquerors, overran Afghanistan, what is now Pakistan, but used to be India. And because the caste Brahmins had so much ostracized those who were not in their monopoly-held illusory, let's say, mafia scheme. So then the Muslim people coming in say, why do you take part in this crazy religion that so much discriminates against you? Join our religion, and your position will be so much better. So here, Srila Prabhupada is extending Vaishnavism to a limit that had never before been seen or demonstrated. And even Srila Prabhupada, when bringing his American and European and African and Australian and Oriental countries' disciples to India, the caste Brahmins put up a great fight even at that time to Srila Prabhupada. And he vehemently defended quoting from the revealed scriptures, the right of everyone to take to Krishna consciousness, and not that because of their so-called considered inferior birth, that they're in any way disqualified from rising to the highest position as you so-called born Brahmins. And ultimately, this is the teaching of Krishna himself, who especially appeared as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to defeat this demoniac conception of life, masquerading as something praiseworthy or religious. He was exercising this basic principle of Krishna consciousness to the furthest limit the history of Vaishnavism had ever seen. So who here is not born in a Brahmin family? Raise their hand. So would you like someone to come tell you that you cannot enter this temple, that you cannot eat with us, you cannot associate with us, we will not accept anything that you cook to offer to the deity, and so many other things. Prabhupada actually, he called out this hypocrisy that one Brahmin guide was actually hired to show devotees around Prabhupada's Western disciples a holy place. So he was accepting money, which the Western disciples had earned or gathered or etc., but he wouldn't eat with them. Oh, and Prabhupada said, he can take your money, but he will not accept your food. This is hypocrisy. Because actually, a spiritual person, a devotee, accepting a contribution, it's not for his benefit, it's for the benefit of the contributor. Invariably, money in the material world is earned in not the most sanguine ways. So if a devotee accepts that, then the fruit of the fruit of that labor to acquire that money is purified, and the contributor is benefited, blessed, and elevated. So it's actually, the devotee is doing you a favor by accepting that offering. So I see the hypocrisy. He can take your money, and what is he spending it on? What is he using it for? But he won't accept your food. Although he was engaging the boys in cooking and typing, Prabhupada was not doing any less himself. Rather, for every sincere soul who came forward to ask for service, 100 came who wanted not to serve but to challenge. So we glorify Srila Prabhupada, who has come to save these Western countries which are filled with impersonalism and voidism. So we think that this is only something that's present in India, where the doctrine of Sankaracharya, which has been existing in its formal form for the last 1,000 years, is prevalent. But no, it is spread all over the world, and people are infected with it. The so-called hippie movement and so-called existential, atheistic, agnostic, whatever the philosophy is, it's all just basically the same thing: impersonalism and voidism. Prabhupada defended Krishna against the Mayavad philosophy. This was his service to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who had not come to America to retire. So, with the passing of each new day came yet another confirmation that his work and his followers and his challengers would only increase. How much he could do was up to Krishna. I am an old man, he said. I may go away at any moment. But if he were to go away, now certainly Krishna consciousness would also go away, because the Krishna consciousness society was nothing but him, his figure leading the chanting while his head moved back and forth in small motions of ecstasy, his figure walking in and out of the temple, through the courtyard, or into his apartment, his person sitting down smilingly to discuss philosophy by the hour. He was the sole bearer and maintainer of the small, fragile, controlled atmosphere of Krishna consciousness on New York's Lower East Side. Prabhupada's health was good that summer and fall, or so it seemed. He worked long and hard, and except for 4 hours of rest at night, he was always active. He would speak intensively, on and on, never tiring, and his voice was strong. His smiles were strong and charming, his singing voice loud and melodious. During kirtan, without amplification, by the way, he would thump Bengali mridanga rhythms on a jazz bongo drum. There was no mridanga here at that time. If anyone goes to New Brindavan in West Virginia and goes to the Palace of Gold, you can see this bongo drum in a glass display case on the right side of the room. So if you go there, remember to go take darshan of this drum. He ate heartily of rice, dal, chapatis, and vegetables with ghee. His face was full and his belly protuberant. Sometimes in a light mood, he would drum with 2 fingers on his belly and say that the resonance affirmed his good health, his golden color, and the radiance of youth and well-being preserved by 70 years of healthy, non-destructive habits. When he smiled, virility and vitality came on so strong as to embarrass a faded, dissolute New Yorker. Who we can also add was twice younger than Prabhupada at the age of 70. In many ways, he was not at all like an old man, and his new followers completely accepted his active youthfulness as a part of the wonder of Swamiji. Srila Prabhupada was called the first 2 years up until the spring of 1968, Swamiji. Swamiji wasn't an ordinary man. He was spiritual. He could do anything. None of his followers dared advise him to slow down, nor did it ever really occur to them that he needed such protection. They were just busy trying to keep up with him themselves. During the 2 months at 26 F, so July, now it's September, he had achieved that which had formerly been only a dream. He now had a temple, a duly registered society, full freedom to preach, and a band of initiated disciples. When a godbrother had written asking him how he would manage a temple in New York, Prabhupada had said that he would need men from India, but that he might find an American or 2 who could help. That had been last winter. There's a chapter in Prabhupada's biography called, "It Will Not Be Possible to Assist You," when all of his friends, godbrothers, and so-called well-wishers in India all withdrew in a very eerie, our reply is no reply, silence. Prabhupada realized he was all alone on his own, completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. Now Krishna had put him in a different situation. He had received no help from his godbrothers, no big donations from Indian business magnates, and no assistance from the Indian government. But he was finding success in a different way. These were, quote, happy days, unquote. He said, he had struggled alone for a year, but then Krishna sent me both men and money. Prabhupada had ultimately got a United States green card, which in those days, you have to be in the United States once within 365 days. Now I think it's 6 months, and then you lose it. So Prabhupada had left the United States in July of 1976 and had wanted to return 13 months later. So some of Prabhupada's disciples went to the U.S. Embassy, Consulate General in Calcutta, and came back with very encouraging news, no problem, because to renew it was, the whole procedure. And also you have to come in for an interview. Prabhupada was indisposed. He was in Vrindavan, physically unable to make such a journey. And when Prabhupada had understood that all the red tape and bureaucracy had been overcome, and the words, no problem, we welcome you back to the United States, Prabhupada began to cry. And he said, I make no distinction between this country or that, but America and New York, but he said, America has given me everything, both men and money. I wish to make them, the Americans, happy, and through them, the entire world. Anyone who's sitting way in the back is welcome to come forward to bridge the gap. But if you want to maintain your being in the back, I can respect that also. But if you can, it would be nice. Yes, these were happy days for Prabhupada, but his happiness was not like the happiness of his old man's sunset years. As he fades into the dim comforts of retirement, his was the happiness of youth, a time of blossoming, of new powers, a time when future hopes expand without limit. He was 71 years old, but in ambition, he was a courageous youth. He was like a young giant just beginning to grow. Actually, there's a Guinness Book of Records for late bloomers over 70, and Srila Prabhupada has a spot there. But, 108 temples and so much property and perceivable capital, but that's just a small part of the iceberg of the success that Prabhupada achieved. He was like a young giant just beginning to grow. He was happy because his preaching was taking hold, just as Lord Chaitanya had been happy when he had traveled alone in South India, spreading the chanting of Hare Krishna. Prabhupada's happiness was that of a selfless servant of Krishna to whom Krishna was sending candidates for devotional life. He was happy to place the seed of devotion within their hearts and to train them in chanting Hare Krishna, hearing about Krishna, and working to spread Krishna consciousness. So the best type of devotional service for all of us in the age that we're living in is molding and organizing your life in such a way that you can qualitatively, combinedly with quantitatively distribute this knowledge to as many other living entities as possible in the time and energy you have in your life. Krishna consciousness is not meant for one's own exclusive, personal, solitary cultivation or contemplation. Materially, 1 minus 1 is 0. Spiritually, 1 minus 1 is 2. And on exponentially growing more and more. The more you give, the more you get. So it's simultaneously the best form of selfishness and selflessness combined at the same time. Prabhupada continued to accelerate. After the first initiations and the first marriage, he was eager for the next step. He was pleased by what he had, but he wanted to do more. So they say, you have to give up greed and lust. You transform them and transfigure them into be greedy and intensely desirous to expand the pleasure potency of Krishna. It was the greed of a Vaishnava, not a greed to have sense gratification, but to take more and more for Krishna. He would go in like a needle and come out like a plow. That is to say, from a small, seemingly insignificant beginning, he would expand his movement to tremendous proportions. At least that was his desire. He was not content with his newfound success and the security at 26 2nd Avenue, but he was yearning to increase ISKCON as far as possible. Prabhupada kept a spinning globe on his desk and would put push pins in it of places that he wanted to open Krishna conscious temples all over the world, even at this early time. We have a replica of this type of globe in Prabhupada's replica museum room here across the hallway. This had always been his vision, and he had written it into the ISKCON Charter to achieve real unity and peace in the world within the members and humanity at large. So, 59 years ago at this time, Prabhupada had been 3 weeks into his 5-week ocean journey from Calcutta down around Kanyakumari, the southern tip of India, stopping briefly in Ceylon, the capital of Sri Lanka, up the west coast of India, into the Arabian Sea, into the Red Sea, ultimately coming to the Suez Canal, through the Mediterranean Sea, Straits of Gibraltar, and Atlantic Ocean crossing. This is hurricane season coming from the Bahamas. That was the most peaceful Atlantic Ocean crossing that the captain and crew of that Indian freighter had ever seen, and they had been doing these Atlantic crossings for decades. It was a miracle. And even Prabhupada remarked, Krishna has taken charge of the ship. So the actual observance by the Vedic or lunar calendar is on the 23rd of September, so 15 days from today. So I'd like to take a little look into the last days of Prabhupada's journey and reveal a very deeply and heartfelt yearning and prayer that he wrote to his beloved Lord Krishna. It is not exactly corresponding to the date. This is Thursday, September 9th, so Prabhupada arrived on the 18th of September in that year. To 4 o'clock this afternoon, we have crossed over the Atlantic Ocean for 24 hours. So 24 hours passed going through the Straits of Gibraltar, which separates Spain or the European continent from Africa. The whole day was clear and almost smooth. So Prabhupada had suffered 2 very painful seizures, which he later described as heart attacks, in the Red Sea, and he didn't know if he would be able to continue. And you read in his diary, he was even seriously contemplating. The captain, they stopped in Port Said, which is in Egypt, at the end of the passage of the Suez Canal, and he was seriously thinking of approaching the Indian embassy there and somehow or another getting himself back to India. He didn't think he could continue. So now I'm taking food regularly again, and I've got some strength to struggle. There's also a slight tacking of the ship, and I'm feeling a slight headache also, but I'm struggling, and the nectar of my life is the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, the source of all my vitality. So the biography describing the life and teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which is universally recognized by pure Vaishnavas as the topmost and most beloved Vaishnava literature, which was compiled in the year 1616, which Srila Prabhupada, in the limited time that he had, made it a very special point to translate in its entirety. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Everyone should have this in their home and read it throughout their lives. September 10th, Friday. Today, the ship is plying very smoothly. I feel better today, and I'm feeling separation from Sri Vrindavan and from my lords Sri Govinda, Gopinath, and Radha Damodar. The only solace is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, in which I am tasting the nectarian life of Lord Chaitanya's Leela pastimes. I have left Bharta Bhumi, India, just to execute the order of my spiritual master in pursuance of Lord Chaitanya's order. I have no qualification, but I have taken up the risk just to carry out the order of His divine grace. I depend fully on their mercy so far away from Vrindavan. So 5 days before reaching the United States of America, which first, somehow or another, didn't directly go to New York. It stopped in Boston Commonwealth Pier. So 5 days before. So the end is near. So he wrote this incredible poem, which is filled with his devotional confidence in his mission that he had undertaken on behalf of his spiritual master. I emphatically say to you, O brothers, you will obtain your good fortune from the Supreme Lord Krishna only when Srimati Radharani becomes pleased with you. And as we are trying to budget some time to hear about the glories of Srimati Radharani, Hare Krishna, Radha Govinda, the feminine counterpart of the supreme whole Krishna, is internal pleasure potency. The summum bonum and source of unlimited pure love of Godhead and devotion for countless unlimited living entities, pure devotees, all over the creation, cosmic manifestation. Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very dear to Lord Gauranga. Lord Chaitanya is the son of Mother Sachi. He is unparalleled in his service to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. He is that great, saintly, spiritual master who bestows intense devotion to Krishna in different places throughout the world. By his strong desire, the holy name of Lord Chaitanya will spread throughout all the countries of the Western world, in all the cities, towns, and villages on the earth, from all the oceans, seas, rivers, and streams. Everyone will chant the holy name of Krishna. As the vast mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu conquers all directions, a flood of transcendental ecstasy will certainly cover the land. So this is the type of conquering, victorious force that we want to see, which is beneficial to the supreme degree for everyone, and is the ultimate victory of warfare, of good over evil. As the vast mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu conquers all directions, a flood of transcendental ecstasy will certainly cover the land. When all the sinful, poor, fallen, miserable living entities become happy, then the Vaishnava's desire is fulfilled. So who is a Vaishnava? He is happy to see the ascendancy of everyone, and he is unhappy to see them in their ignorance, in their fallen condition. That is Vaishnava. Not otherwise. Although my Guru Maharaj ordered me to accomplish this mission, I am not worthy or fit to do it. I'm very fallen and insignificant. Therefore, O Lord, now I'm begging your mercy so that I may become worthy, for you are the wisest and most experienced of all. So the ship landed in Boston, and there was a 24-hour period that they remained there. And Srila Prabhupada he went through U.S. Immigrations and Customs in Boston, and the captain was a very friendly and a religious person. He took Srila Prabhupada on a walk around Boston, and Prabhupada got his first-hand experience of what the atmosphere would be like in a big American city. So back on board the Jaladuta, before leaving Boston to make the short journey from Boston around Cape Cod, and they didn't go into Long Island Sound. They went on the south shore of Long Island, going through the Narrows, where the Verrazano Narrows Bridge is, and ultimately coming to a 17th Street Sunset Park Brooklyn pier, which is no longer operating in that way. There is a Home Depot next to New York City sanitation place where garbage is put. My dear Lord Krishna, you are so kind upon this useless soul, but I do not know why you have brought me here. Now you can do whatever you like with me, but I guess you have some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place? Most of the population here is covered by the material modes of ignorance and passion. Absorbed in material life, they think themselves very happy and satisfied. And therefore, they have no taste for the transcendental message of Vasudeva, Krishna. So that's the danger of becoming absorbed materially, material sense of gratification, material mental speculation, that your ability to understand the value and experience the paramananda, the pleasure of Krishna consciousness, becomes minimized to the point where it disappears, and even worse, you think those who are actually properly situated are crazy. And you become very, very proud of your very dangerous and erroneous material position. Actually, Prabhupada, seeing this dichotomy, one of the first publications that he made was just a little pamphlet. He said, you may print this and distribute this when people accuse you of, what is this nonsense? And the pamphlet simply was, who's crazy? Are the devotees crazy, or are the materialists crazy? You be the judge. I do not know how they will be able to understand it, but I know that your causeless mercy can make everything possible, because you are the most expert mystic. Yogeshvar, the master of all mystic powers. If you have love of Godhead, loving reciprocation between yourself and Krishna, anything and everything that you need to perform miracles beyond your wildest comprehension will be there to serve you without your even asking or desiring. Yet at the same time, miracles are not performed for some cheap profit or adoration. Prabhupada was traveling by train in India with some of his Western disciples, and two Indian men came into his private compartment, having a conversation. They said, Swamiji, show us a miracle. And Prabhupada pointed to his Western disciples who were wearing devotional clothes, wearing tilak, and shaved head, had given up the prosperous life in America to join him in India. And Prabhupada simply motioned to them and said, this is my miracle. Actually, it said in one place, if one can convert a meat eater, a Malecha, a Yavana, to Vaishnavism, one is situated on the highest stage. One is on the topmost level of a Mahabhagavat, Uttamadhikari, if one can do that. Prabhupada did perform miracles rarely. Here's one. One of Prabhupada's early disciples, Jadharani Devi Dasi, she's now known as dual name Shamarani. She is still to date one of the greatest devotional artists in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. And many of her paintings are throughout Srila Prabhupada's books. So Prabhupada, upon a visit to where his book publishing and his artist colony was situated in Los Angeles, she was very, very, very ill. The devotees even considered her deathly ill. No one could find any way to cure her. And she was like a young woman at the time in her mid to late 20s, confined to a wheelchair. She had like no energy. Prabhupada asked to see her. They brought her in the wheelchair and had to carry her up the stairs to Prabhupada's quarters. And finally, and Prabhupada said, come here, not just on the other side of the room. And she crawled the remaining steps. Prabhupada put his hand on her head, not just like feeling her fever or pulse, but it seemed to the devotees witnessing this that Prabhupada's hand touching her head was like a divining rod. And Prabhupada simply said, you will be all right. And the latest doctor that she was following some prescription for diet and medicine, Prabhupada said, and this particular doctor, he is a quack. And he gave her some very, very simple, basic instructions what to do. And immediately upon hearing this, she got filled with so much energy. And within 2 or 3 days, she was completely healthy, as if nothing had happened. It was like normal, the type of illness she was in. If she was to recover at all, it would have taken weeks and months. You are the most expert mystic. How will they understand the mellows of devotional service? Oh Lord, I am simply praying for your mercy so that I will be able to convince them about your message. All living entities have come under the control of the illusory energy by your will, and therefore, if you like, by your will, they can also be released from the clutches of illusion. I wish that you may deliver them. Therefore, if you so desire their deliverance, then only will they be able to understand your message. So, by the intense desire and prayers of such a Mahabhagavat, such an exalted personality, all of us, even against all logic and reason, can be filled with the most intense desire and enthusiasm to achieve the highest goal of life, which by our own destiny or will or desire, it's practically inconceivable. How will they understand this message of Krishna consciousness? I am very unfortunate, unqualified, and the most fallen. Therefore, I am seeking your benediction so that I can convince them, for I am powerless to do so on my own. Krishna has 33 million demigods to do everything that's required for the upkeep of this cosmic manifestation. Everything. Krishna, he doesn't have to do anything. Satya Sankalpa, whatever he desires, no matter how complicated, immediately becomes factual truth. Instantly. This is God. How great is God? But there's one thing that Krishna wants to do that he reserves the task for he alone to do. And that is Bhakta Vatsal. He's very affectionate to his devotees. He simply wants to fulfill the desires of his pure devotees who have no other desire than to please himself. So it is a competition between the devotee and his worshipful, lovable Lord, which escalates greater and greater with more and more nuance and variegatedness, never coming to a stop. No one admits defeat. That is the spiritual energy. It is unlimitedly expanding. There is a glorification of Srimati Radharani by Srila Rupa Goswami that her love is although it is all pervasive, It's already everywhere, all pervasive. It increases at every moment. And although it is the most important, most exalted, topmost, most valuable thing, simultaneously, it is completely devoid of all pride. You ever see anyone very highly situated, in the best position, whatever it might be? Are they humble? Rarely, if ever. Somehow or other, O Lord, you have brought me here to speak about you. Now, my Lord, it is up to you to make me a success or failure as you like. O spiritual master of all the worlds, I can simply repeat your message. So if you like, you can make my power of speaking suitable for their understanding. Only by your causeless mercy will my words become pure. I am sure that when this transcendental message penetrates their hearts, they will certainly feel gladdened and thus become liberated from all unhappy conditions of life. Two very sincere souls who were boyfriend and girlfriend at the time, going to the University of Texas in Austin. They were seniors there in 1965 when there was this crazed madman climbed up on the tower and started shooting people indiscriminately. And some of their best friends were killed in that, completely distraught, looking for the answers in life. Gary was the young boy's name. He was in great anxiety about being drafted into the war in Vietnam, which after the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the would-be successor, Lyndon Baines Johnson, as if by some sinister clockwork, just started escalating the United States' involvement in that terrible war. So they came and somehow met Srila Prabhupada and just kind of unloaded upon Srila Prabhupada in their first meeting, personal meeting, all of their problems and anxieties. And Prabhupada simply smiling and you simply come to my classes, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam classes, just come. Every time I'm speaking, and everything will be all right. All your problems will be solved. And you know what? They were. I am sure that when this transcendental message penetrates their hearts, they will certainly feel gladdened and thus become liberated from all unhappy conditions of life. Oh Lord, I'm just like a puppet in your hands. So if you have brought me here to dance, then make me dance, oh Lord, make me dance as you like. I have no devotion, nor do I have any knowledge, but I have strong faith in the holy name of Krishna. I have been designated as Bhaktivedanta, and now, if you like, you can fulfill the real purport of Bhakti Vedanta. Signed, the most unfortunate, insignificant beggar, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, on board the ship Jaladuta. You know what Jaladuta means? The messenger of the waters. How appropriate. On board the ship Jaladuta, Commonwealth. You know, the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Is there another one? I don't know. But the Commonwealth of Love of Godhead. Boston, Massachusetts, USA, dated 18 September 1965. Now, today is our Radhastami ceremony. I must now speak something about Radharani. Okay. Radharani is the pleasure potency of Krishna. Krishna is the supreme Brahman. Just try to understand. Krishna is the supreme Brahman, the supreme spirit. Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. So when Param Brahma wants to enjoy, that enjoying spirit is there in the Param Brahma. Otherwise, we cannot have this enjoying spirit. Because we are part and parcel, therefore we have got that enjoying spirit. But that is materially contaminated. But the fact is there, because Krishna, he is enjoying. This enjoying spirit we have got also. but I do not know how to enjoy. We are trying to enjoy in the matter, in the dull matter. That is spiritual. So, Brahman Sukhinubhutya. People are trying to feel what is Brahma Sukhya, spiritual pleasure. So many yogis, they have given up their family life, their kingdom, and meditating to achieve that Brahman pleasure. Actually, the idea is Brahman pleasure. So many brahmacharis, so many sannyasis, they're trying to achieve that Brahman pleasure. And in order to achieve that Brahman pleasure, they're neglecting, they're kicking off all this material pleasure. So do you think that this Brahman pleasure is ordinary? To achieve a portion of Brahman pleasure, if they're kicking off all this material pleasure, don't talk of ourselves. This is a transcript of a class Prabhupada gave, verbatim. So it wasn't edited to be smoothly reading like in a book. In our history, we have got instances, that of Bharat Maharaj, whose name, India originally, and this planet was called Bharatvarsha. This Bharat Maharaj was the emperor of the whole world. And as an emperor, he had his beautiful wife, young children. At the age of only 24 years, just a young man, he gave up everything. This is a very old story, of course. And we all know the story of Lord Buddha. He was also a prince, not an ordinary man. And he was a Kshatriya from the ruling class. And he was always enjoying. There are many hundreds of instances in Indian history. So they realized that Brahman pleasure, they gave up everything. That is the way. Tapasya, voluntarily giving up material pleasure to experience higher spiritual pleasure. So, do you think that the Supreme Brahman, the source of all spiritual pleasure, Lord Krishna, is enjoying this material pleasure? Is that very reasonable? No. This Krishna, he's enjoying Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamanam. Hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune are engaged in his service. Do you think these Lakshmis are ordinary material women? How Krishna can take pleasure in material women? No, this is mistake. Ananda Chinmay Rasa Prativyapitabis Tabirya Eva Nija Rupataya Kalabi. In the Brahma Samhita, you'll find that he expands his Ananda Chinmay Rasa, the mellow of transcendental pleasure potency. And these gopis, they are the expansions of his pleasure potency, and Radharani is the center, the chief. Don't take Radharani as an ordinary woman like we have our wife or sister or mother. No, she is the pleasure potency, and the birth of Radharani was completely transcendental and spiritual. So this birth of Radharani is today, and her name is not found in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the atheistic class of men protest this Radharani's name is not in the Srimad Bhagavatam. How this name came? Radharani, but they do not know how to see it. There is Anyaradyate. There are many gopis, but there is mention that by this particular gopi, he, Krishna, is served more pleasingly. Krishna accepts this gopi's service more gladly. Aradyate. This aradyate means worshiping, from the word aradyate. Radha has come. So literally, the name Radharani means she who is the chief and best worshiper of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And on this is 1968 we're reading, but Prabhupada was present here in New York City, the first held Radhastami, 2 weeks after Janmashtami, and to summarize everything in a simple and very profound, deep and yet sanguine way, he says, Radharani is the greatest devotee of Krishna because she loves Krishna the most. Or she is the best knower of how to love and serve Krishna. So hence, she is the source and ultimate authority for all gurus and spiritual masters who teach Krishna consciousness. So Radha Krishna philosophy is a very great philosophy. It is to be understood in the liberated stage. Radha Krishna philosophy is not to be understood in the conditioned stage, when we still identify ourselves with this body and mind. Actually, we worship Radha and Krishna on the platform of Lakshmi Narayan, awe and reverence. You have seen this picture, this Vidhi Marg and Raga Marg. Radha Krishna worship is on the platform of pure spontaneous love, and Lakshmi Narayan worship is on the platform of regulative principles. So as long as we do not develop our pure love, we have to worship on the regulative principle platform. So many rules and regulations. There are at least 64 rules and regulations, and we shall introduce them gradually as you develop. So in the Vidhi Marg, stage of practice, when you have no love for God or Krishna, we have to follow the regulative principles, and automatically there is practice. When practicing, just like you practice this mridanga playing, in the beginning it is not in order, but when you become well-versed in the practice, the sound will come very nice. Practice makes perfect. Practice leads to perfection. You just have to keep practicing. Similarly, when we are engaged in the regulative principles in the worship of Radha and Krishna, this is called sadhana bhakti, Vidhi Marg. And actually, when you are elevated and are on the love platform, that is called Raga Marg. So without Vidhi Marg, if anyone wants to learn Raga Marg immediately, that is foolishness. And here's an easy analogy. Nobody can pass MA examination without going through the regular principles of primary schools and colleges, right? So therefore, I mean to say, indulge in discussions of Radha and Krishna so easily. Rather, go on with the regulative principles at the present moment. Gradually, as you become purified, you will understand what is Radha and Krishna. Don't try to understand Radha Krishna very quickly. It is a very big subject. If we want to understand Radha Krishna very quickly, there will be so many Prakrita Sahajyas. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai. So we'll see you all back here Wednesday night to celebrate the appearance day of Srimati Radharani. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.